I had good days there was, without a doubt, I was the fastest man in the world. I hate to go in third person, but the best Rick Johnson, who did he fear and who did he wake up sick, during the week and every stuff? It was David Bailey and Jeff Ward. On a Wednesday to go sign with Yamaha. That morning I got up, Roger DeCoster called me and said, would you be interested in riding for us?
In episode 2 of Rick Johnson, the big interview, Rick talks about why he finally left Yamaha, the big bait and switch, and how good that Honda factory bike really was.
So getting back to the 80s, the good old golden era of that, do you look back on it with fond memories? I mean, was it really a golden era for you, or was it kind of a rose-tinted glasses kind of thing now, and maybe it wasn't that great?
No, it was phenomenal. The 80s were great because, once again, we were trying a lot of stuff. All the way back to the clothes that I was wearing, the big baggy Life's a Beach clothes, the Bad Boy Club stuff, bringing back the Letterman's jacket, mullets, tall in the front, long in the back, shave the sides, doing all the different stuff. Music was crazy. You had new wave, punk, funk, country. It was very much a diversified time. And when it came to motocross, same thing. We switched to production bikes, so then that sort of leveled the playing field out a little bit because Honda, I feel, was so much better than everybody. So when you made it to where it was like a works production bike, kind of what we have now, you could do the cylinder, you could do the crank, you could do the suspension, but you couldn't do the frame, supposedly. But it did level the playing field a little bit and brought back some of the rider. But when it came to that, I think it was a little bit of an advantage for Brock Glover and I riding the production bikes. Even though they weren't as good, we knew them very well.
So I know when we talked to David Bailey, he was talking about he rode one of Brock's bikes at one point, and he was just amazed by how much torque that motor had compared to his Honda, and he wanted that, but he didn't like the rest of the bike. How close was your factory Yamaha bike, yours and Brock's? How close was that to a production bike? Was it really tricked out, or was it freestyle?
I'll be honest with you. In 1984, that thing was so close to stock. We had Bud Asklin, who put a longer rod in it, so everything just moved up. So it gave the case more volume, and it gave it a little bit more bottom end and a little bit smoother power. Also, we had a handmade pipe from him, stock silencer. And then I had an Öhlins rear shock and Simon's anti-cav kits for the front. So it was just an addition to a production fork. Now, Brock ran them in Europe and Sweden at a Supercross, and I tested them before the Swedish Motocross to Nations in '84. And the Öhlins upside down fork was so much better. I was like, let me run this. I'm literally 2.5 seconds a lap faster, and I can hit stuff way harder. And Yamaha said no. We have to stick to our guns. And I'm like, that was the comment that made me leave Yamaha, because the equipment was there for me to use, but their pride in standing behind what they had to do, they wouldn't let me do it. And so I'm like, Honda did anything that you needed, but Yamaha said no, we need to stick to our guns, and they pushed that production rule because it was budget. They pulled Brock and I into the office and said, we have two choices. One is we're going to buy you out of your contract. We have another year on there and let you do something else, or we'll go to production bikes. And Brock and I both were thinking, man, if we can get all that money for a year and then sign with somebody else, it'd be a great payday. But it actually worked out great for both Brock and I. I won the championship in '84, and I fought really hard against Ron Lachine and different guys, and Bob Hanna. And so it was a very gratifying year, but it was a tough year.
And you mentioned Honda. What if you could have switched to any bike? Was the Honda the thing to switch to at that point?
Absolutely. And it's funny. The other day I was thinking about this. You kind of reminisce of what if I would have done this, or what if I would have done that, and you daydream for a little bit. Then you come back and realize you are where you are, and that's exactly where you're supposed to be. The good, the bad, everything was just part of your life. But in 1982, after Donnie Hansen got hurt, they tested me and they offered me a ride, but it was less money, and felt that I wanted to be loyal to Yamaha because I was going to get a works ride, but I didn't know how bad the OWs were going to be. And I turned it down. I thought, wow, what if I would have went with Honda, and what would my career have been with? And, to have that many years with that bike, and have those really bitch of works bikes. Who knows? I might have gotten over arrogant and got hurt and paralyzed or died, or who knows what would have happened. I am where I am because I'm where I'm supposed to be. But sometimes you think, what if I would have turned right instead of left? And at the time, Honda with Dave Arnold, Roger DeCoster, they they had it down. I mean, they worked so hard, and those were the best guys to work for. But Dave was very great behind the scenes. Roger had the race knowledge and all different stuff, and he was my idol, along with Johnny and Dave and everybody else. So when you have your idol come in and give you advice, you don't argue. You just do it.
So if you moved over to Honda in '86, so you never actually got to ride the full factory bike.
I got the bait and switch. I was supposed to go ride. I was supposed to sign with Yamaha because, let me back the story up a little bit. Kawasaki was going to hire me, and I tested their bike, and everything was going to go good. I was going to leave Yamaha at the end of '85 and ride for Kawasaki. Well, Ronnie has a situation with the Japan situation and got fired from Honda, and then Kawasaki hired him because he was younger than me. And so then I thought, well, I'm just going to sign with Yamaha. That's what I got. So I was set to on a Wednesday to go sign with Yamaha. That morning I got up, Roger DeCoster called me and said, would you be interested in riding for us? I said, well, I want to try the bike. So they met me down by Carlsbad, a little place called La Costa. I tested the bike, and it was Ronnie's works bike. They just adjusted the handlebars and the sag for me, and it was unbelievable. Just the power was, it didn't feel fast. Like it didn't, like David said, the Yamaha power hit harder. Like the torque levels were much higher. But this almost felt like an electric motor. It was just smooth, and next thing you know, you were just going unbelievably fast. So I did get to ride the Works Honda, but I never got to race the Works Honda.
How good was it? I mean, relative to the production bike that you ended up racing after that, I mean, was it head and shoulders?
You didn't feel fast on it. You just felt secure, and you could hit stuff, and the way the suspension worked. And that was the first time that I rode with Show of Works and got to experience that. The linkage was phenomenal. It was a little different to time stuff because it actually absorbed so much. So you had to adjust your riding style. But would I go much faster on it? No, but it'd probably make me save a lot more energy, and just the thought of having something that great between your legs would the riders, like David said, he would sit there and look down and I can't believe I'm riding this thing. And so just to know that you have the best weapon on the line would mean a lot.
So when you moved to Honda, that was again essentially a production bike, but with all the magic stuff on it. Did that take a long time to adjust and adapt? Because you've done 4 or 5 years as a Yamaha guy at that point. Was there a big change at that point?
Yeah, I never had a hard time adapting. For one, growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, so I would ride other people's bikes all the time. I rode my sister's. When I was like 7, I rode my sister's 100, my cousin Loris's TM 400. I loved riding anything. It was kind of fun. I enjoyed it because it was new, and you had to experience how it was going to turn, how it jumped, was it going to kick, was the wheel high, whatever the case may be. And then also when I was really young, I would go racing one night, 3 different classes. I had a Ben Alberg TT 500. I had a YZ250 and a YZ125. And I would go back to back to back. I would race all 3 classes. So I was comfortable with switching bikes. So when I got on the Honda, it didn't take me long at all. Is that going to mess you up? She'll get that.
Yeah, when I was...
So when I got on the Honda, it didn't take me long to adapt. Like I got a production bike. I went out and rode it. We did all the different stuff, and I'll never forget this. And so Brian says, "Well, come on up we're going to put work suspension and stuff on your bike. Bring it up to Simi Valley." Well, I was used to Yamaha, to where I would get a pre-production bike, ride it, and then they would build all the stuff, and that was my race bike for the Golden State and stuff like that. So I got there. I put my bike on the thing because I've been riding it quite a while. And I see Johnny's brand new bike come out, and I see David's brand new bike come out, and I'm thinking, oh man, it's going to take forever for them to build my bike. And the next thing you know, they roll my bike out. And it's like, you can see it's got the Works subframe and the Works forks and the rear disc and all the different stuff. And it just, you're like a kid getting a new set of shoes for school. You're just like, oh man, I can't wait to go ride it. And so you start it, and the thing that always amazed me about the Hondas was their cranks. Whoever that guy is, I'd love to give him a hug, because you get on that bike and you run, and it just would smooth up and smooth down. Like the Yamaha was gonna and vibrate and shake your hands. As David said, more violent. But the Honda was just so smooth. It was like butter. And when you rode it, it translated to traction on the ground. It was just so nice.
When we talked to David, he said the last day they went testing at Honda in '85 with the factory bike, he didn't want to let go of the bike. He rode off into the back and just screwed around and just went blasting around and just had so much fun. That place was kind of a magical place. Honolulu was, a weird magical place. Did you spend much time out there?
I would go there, and it was kind of a little shop of horrors for me, because the Honolulu track was kind of a hybrid. It was so much bigger. The tabletop I think was 70 feet long, which was twice as long as any other tabletop. It was also like 35 feet tall. So it was really big. And so if you over jumped it, which I did a couple times, you'd land on the ground, you'd blow wheels apart and it'd feel like you're going to break frames. So I would go there, and Johnny and David had it so wired. I mean, Johnny had a spot where he'd roll back his truck up in the same wheel spots. He could unload his bike without doing that. And they would hit the same thing. You hear it was brup, 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 brup. They had it timed perfectly. And I was always kind of more banging through the whoops and coming short on the jumps and stuff. So I struggled at Hondaland. I really didn't like it. I tried, and I went up there and I tried to train with them, and they were so far advanced than me when it came to physical training with the running and cycling and stuff. They about killed me. And I said, I just need to be the best me. I don't want to be a triathlete. I don't want to run marathons. I want to win races. So that's when Brian Lennis and I focused on back down in Hamul down in San Diego, and said, I just need to be able to go 20 laps wide open, or 30 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever the case may be, and train myself to do that, and don't worry about that other stuff.
So how much training did you do? I know David and Johnny were just crazy about that stuff eventually. How did you train? What was it?
When it came to training, Johnny and David were unbelievable. Jeff Ward was really strong at it. Mike Bell kind of brought in the bicycling aspect. Brock was very, very strong and very fit as well. But I'll be honest, I was lazy. I didn't want to do it. Like people go, oh, I want to go run. I hated running. I had big legs. It felt like a Clydesdale running, but I would do it, and I wasn't bad. I did some 10Ks. I did one triathlon, and the Olympic distance 1 mile swim with, I forget how far, it was a 30-some mile bike ride and a 10K run or something like that. So I did it, and I liked it because I knew it made me a better racer. But my main goal was I would go out and practice, and I would practice as fast as I could go. As soon as the stopwatch hit, I was trying to beat my lap, and I could find out where I tapered off. And so Brian Lennis would always be out there with the board, and if he told me -1, then I was 1 second slower than my fastest time. If he showed me the lap time, say went to a 58, that now became the standard, so I was just constantly racing myself, trying to go faster and faster. And then and Brian was very good about that, it's us against the world. Screw Johnny, screw David, screw Wardy, blah, blah, all these guys. Hate those guys and be the best that you can be. And so Brian rode bicycles with me. So I did the bicycling, swimming, some weights, and some different things like that. But all of it was just a matter to make me stronger.
So again, along those same lines, David was saying that one of the differences he thinks between then and now was that most of you guys, well, certainly in his case, he was a lot of the time training back in West Virginia, away from everybody else. Mm-hmm. And unlike today, where lots of guys, sometimes from different teams, are training under the same guy in Florida or whatever, so nobody knew how fast David was, how fast Ricky was. You all came to the races having no clue whether you were fast enough or not. Now you kind of almost know ahead of time who's quick and who isn't. Is that? Do you think that was a good thing back then to not know, and did it push you to go further?
Um, Back then versus now, with the guys, Honda has a test track, everybody's there. Suzuki has a test track, everyone's there. These guys are buddies. The Alden Bakers, have their training stuff back there. We were separated a lot. Johnny and David hung out together, and Brock and I did some riding together and stuff like that. But everyone kind of did their own thing. Everybody was a little bit different. Now everyone's kind of the same thing in a slightly different camp. Did it help or hurt? I think it all came down to the individual. If For me, I think it was better for me to be by myself and just race the ghost that is me, and try to be the best that I can be on that day, because I was a little bit too aggressive going towards somebody else. Whether if I see somebody, I want to beat them, I want to attack them. I make it personal when you don't need to make it personal. And that's one of the things that Jeff Spencer always told me is, don't worry about anybody until it's time. Doesn't matter if they're way ahead of you or way behind you. You be the best that you can be. And if the planets align and it's time for you to make it personal, then you make it personal. But you don't make it personal before the race. You're wasting energy. So for me, it was better to have some separation. I'm glad that I didn't have the tracks and sit there and look at and have my mechanic show me that I'm 2 seconds off my teammate. That I think I'd probably force me to hurt myself.
If Ricky Johnson were reincarnated 30 years later and started racing a couple of years ago, if you were at the level that you were back then, how do you think you would have fared against today's riders on today's bikes and that level of training and practice?
Of course, I'm arrogant, and I think that I can beat anybody, So, do I think that I would dominate and win every race? Absolutely not. I didn't back then. I had good days where without a doubt, I was the fastest man in the world. I didn't matter if it was sand, whatever. I would love how many targets there are now. I would love to go race Jeffrey Hurlings in Lummel. You know what I mean? Can I beat him? Probably not. But guess what? He's going to know I'm there. I like to take on Eli Tomac in Supercross. I like to take on Webb. It doesn't matter. Whoever it is, figure it out. And whatever they're doing, figure them out. I would love a shot at Ricky Carmichael. I would love a shot at Jeremy McGrath. All these things. I love a shot at Roger DeCoster and Joel Robert. It doesn't matter. I'm a gamer. I want to go race them, and I'll figure it out. I'll find a way to beat you. And if I don't, guess what? We got next week and next week and next week, unless I hurt myself. So, I don't look at it now thinking, oh, I wish I was in this generation. I'd live the best generation, absolutely. But would I love a chance to go stack it up, stack what I got up against them to see how I would fare, because I would be a different athlete now. I'll be leaner. I wouldn't get as sick because I would know my training and my body better because the technology is there. Got to remember, we were just at the beginning of heart rate monitors and stuff like that. That was big. Ooh, are you aerobic or anaerobic? How much fat should you have? How lean should you be? All these different things. So the technology is there to make you a better rider and make you more fit and give you more longevity. So yeah, I would love a shot at him. And do I think I could beat him? Damn right.
So I'll mention the names. Mm-hmm. Just give me kind of a three word synopsis.
Repeat their name.
Just tell me what you thought of them back then. David Bailey.
David Bailey, unbelievably smooth, unbelievably professional, and good.
Jeff Ward.
Jeff Ward, tenacious, longevity, impeccable with his work, and a champion. Brock Glover, a role model, a friend, a mentor, and once again, he's also a champion, but classy. He always did everything right. If it was his car, his house, whatever he did, Brock always did everything with class.
Bob Hammett.
Bob Hanna, tenacious, aggressive, champion, but very, very sloppy.
What about Danny Chandler?
Danny Chandler was scary. He was scary fast. When I say that, I don't mean that I do mean it in kind of a bad way, because anytime you raced with Danny Chandler, you took nothing for granted. You never, because it wasn't like he was trying to take you out, but if you gave him an inch, he would stick it in on you. Didn't matter. And the fact that he could find speed, him and Hannah had that ability, that they could find speed where you're like, where are they finding it? You know, it's kind of like the Jeffrey Hurlings now, where he just goes fast and you look at it, it's like it doesn't make sense, but it's working. And Danny Chandler had that.
But both he and Hannah, as opposed to Hurlings, always looked fast, always looked out of control, always looked like they were just over the edge somewhere.
Well,
Hurlings doesn't look like that most of the time.
So if you compare those three guys, that once again we have technology. You had guys, little guys, they weren't that big, Magoo and Hannah on 500s that didn't have that great of suspension, didn't have that great of tires, on carbureted bikes with powers that hit in weird spots, and so it made them, when you're riding them at that peak power, it falls off and it hits hard. Where Hurlings now has the steel chassis, the fuel injection, tires are better, and the different stuff. He's obviously a much more evolved Danny Chandler and Bob Hanna, but that's, you know, those three guys, wicked fast.
So when you went to the line, and all those guys were there, which guys were you most worried about? Which guy was the biggest competition for? David
and Wardy, if I had to just like say two guys when I was talking at my peak. Now I obviously I had great competitors from the time I was a little kid all the way through 9 to 11 expert, 12 and over expert, intermediate pro, all that different stuff. But when I say I hate to go in third person, but the best Rick Johnson, who did he fear and who did he wake up sick, you know, during the week and every stuff? It was David Bailey and Jeff Ward. Because it didn't matter if I beat them last week, I could crush them last week. They would come back stronger the next week. And that to me is what a true champion is that you don't accept defeat. You in a way you accept it, but you figure out why you got beat and you fix the problem and you come back. And that's what I really knew that with my generation. Even Brock, Johnny, Lachine, Hannah, the list goes, Howard, and all those different guys. You could beat them one week, they come back stronger the next.
Thanks for watching. Now head over to motocrossthegoldenera.com to see my 480-page coffee table book and relive the greatest time in motocross.